Hello, my name is Trevor Smith. I'm one of the job coaches here with Momentum Scotland as part of the Fair Start Scotland programme that you are already on. Obviously, we're in the middle of some rather strange times, and we hope that this short video finds you well. Obviously, because of the lockdown and because of COVID-19, we're not able to do face-to-face delivery. We're also not able to do a lot of classroom sessions, which many of you will be familiar with. So what we thought we're going to try is sending you some short videos. So for those who are customers of mine and whose job coach I am, you'll know that I do like to have regular classroom sessions where we can cover a range of the subjects that's on your action plan. You know, when we go through your action plan review and your catalyst, that throws up some tasks that you have to cover, and we want to work on some of those. Now, I wanted to start off today by working on the subject of exploring opportunities for work-related transport, which for me is really quite it's quite an important one, I suppose, in terms of how we get to and from work, because particularly if you're one of my clients, you probably live in quite a remote area. If you're working with some of the other job coaches, you might have better transport links, but the same sort of things that you can look at will apply, and they will make your life a lot easier, because it's very easy for us to say that, no, I can't take that job purely because you can't get to it. And it's understandable that, you know, where there are poor rural transport links, it might not be entirely obvious how you can get there. There are some tools out there that you can use though, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. So the first tool I want to talk to you about is Travelline Scotland. Now, Travelline Scotland it's a national website, and it's all about how you can get about using public transport. So it's not just about buses, it's about ferries, it's about trains. Whatever the system of transport might be in the area you live, that's going to be covered by anything that's related to public transport within Scotland. So you can get onto it by either Googling Travelline Scotland, and that'll take you straight to a link to it, or you can go straight to their website, travellinescotland.com. Now, I've took the liberty of doing this on my iPad. That's what it will bring you with. Now, you will notice up here in the top corner there are two bars. One is a from and one is a to. Pretty straightforward, really. And the most accurate way of doing this is, if you're looking to get from your home address to a place of work, you can enter your home postcode in there. That will then generate either your nearest bus stop, your nearest train station, whatever it might be. And in the to box, if you've got the postcode of the address of the place of work, if you can put that in, be as accurate as possible, because that'll get you to the nearest bus stop, train station, whatever it might be. So when you do that, you then click on the link that says Plan My Journey, and that will come up with a range of different options for you. It'll ask you to put in the time you want to be there, or the time you want to leave the house. My recommendation would always be, if the job's to start at 9 o'clock, you need to be arriving for about 22, 8:45, and it'll give you the various travel options there. Now, it might be that you need to take more than one method of transport, or if it's a bus, it might be more than one bus, or if it's a train, it might be more than one train. So have a look at those options and just have a look at the time it's going to take to travel. And bear in mind as well, if you're on Universal Credit, if you're on Job Seekers, there is an expectation that you'll travel for an hour. So, you know, if it's massively more than an hour, don't think there's going to be too much pressure on you to do that. But as I say, please be aware that, you know, you would be expected to travel for in excess of an hour if need be, but nobody's going to expect you to have to leave the house at 6 o'clock in the morning to start work at 9 o'clock at night. But that's basically one of the best public transport apps that you can use. So there are others. For example, if you live in the area that I cover, in Galashiels, in Hawick, in Eyemouth, Berwick area, you're going to be largely covered by border buses, but there are others. There's Peterhog, there's Travelsure, various others. If you're living a little bit further north, you might be covered by Lothian buses, you might be covered by Stagecoach, might be the Go Ahead group, whoever that is. They've all got their own apps, but they will all cover purely their own routes. So what I would recommend you do is, initially you can use Travelline Scotland. However, with these difficult times and with everything we're going through, we all know there's a lot of bus services being cancelled. There's a lot of restrictions on public transport. So if you were looking for a bus route, particularly during this lockdown period, what you might want to do is have a look on Travelline, see who those operators are, and then revert to their websites. Incidentally, if you're not as digital IT savvy as others, and clearly as me, trying to do these webinars and video sessions and things like that, which is very much a new thing for me as well, there is a telephone line as well. So if you weren't confident in working through that website, you can give them a call. Their number is 0871 200 22 33. That's 0871 200 2233, and they will then do those searches for you. The final thing I want to say on Travelline is that if you have a smartphone, so if you're somebody using one of the iPhones, one of the latest Android phones, whatever it might be, you can go to your app store on there. You can download the Travelline app. It is free. It's a really useful tool to have, actually. It's something I use all the time if I'm out and about, if you're out socialising, if you're wanting to know what's the last bus home, what's the last train home, whenever it is, and you're somewhere that perhaps you don't frequent very regularly, it's also really useful for that as well. So if you have got a smartphone and you carry your smartphone with you regularly, I would highly recommend putting that up on there. It's certainly one of the apps that I use more than many of the others that's on there. So that covers a broad range of public transport, as I say. Buses, ferries, trains, those sorts of things. But what about other methods? If we don't have a car, I mean, it's ideal if you do have a car, because then you can pretty much get to where you need to be. But not everywhere is going to be accessible for you in a reasonable amount of time. So for example, I have clients who I know live in the Hawick area that have been looking at jobs in Livingston and things like that, and yes, you can use the Travelline app and it will get you to those places, but it'll probably take you 2.5 hours, whereas that for a lot of people is too much, and there wouldn't be an expectation on you to travel that far to take a job perhaps that doesn't take that much, pay that much money anyway. And it could be that one of those jobs is sort of minimum wage, that sort of thing. The cost of travelling actually then makes you worse off, because you've all had your better off calculations, and if you haven't had your better off calculation, please do contact your job coach, because they do need to conduct that with you. But you don't want to be any worse off for travelling. So another option might be to look at a local lift share scheme. So for example, the Scottish Borders area where I operate, and where out the Gala Shields office operates, there is a lift share scheme that's run through the local authority, but it's not by the local authority. So you can log on to their website. It's www.liftshare.com. Now if you do that, you will be expected to register with them. Again, it'll ask you where you're going from, and there's bits and pieces of routes, and actually people who have got cars have already registered to that site. Perhaps they want you to share the cost of the petrol, so it's more economical for them to travel to work. By all means, register for that, and I suppose it's a bit like a dating app in many ways. It's whether the person who owns that vehicle is prepared to give you a lift. Do bear in mind this is probably a very short-term option, because what I would always say is, firstly, once you've managed to get to work, there's quite often people travelling from the areas where you might live, so or be passing through your areas. It's always within their interests to share costs. It's environmentally friendly. Let's remember, we're all trying to look after the planet as well. So by if you can get 3 or 4 people in a car that work in one location, and you can share the cost of that petrol, you're reducing your carbon footprint. It's a very, very economical and very environmentally friendly way of doing things. The downside to lift share is if the person that you rely on for a lift is off work, if they're taking holidays, whatever that might be, that then might create you problems with sustaining your employment, which is where you have to look at other methods of trying to get to work. So as a shorter term option, I think lift share is a really, really good way forward. But you've also got to bear in mind that, as I say, if you're relying very heavily on somebody else, and it depends how heavily those people can be relied upon. So that's another thing that you can consider. Another thing you can consider is rail travel. So for example, if you're lucky enough to live, for example, on the Borders, the new Border rail line, which a lot of money was spent on, that will get you up to Edinburgh. It'll get you to various other places. And if you wanted to look for train times and the costs of tickets and things like that, there are a couple of ways you can go about that. The most accurate way about finding live reporting on trains, on train times, on fares, what's running, what's not, etc., is National Rail Inquiries. That covers the entire network that's looked after by Network Rail. And again, it's web-based. There is an app you can download, and you can go to nationalrail.co.uk, and that will, again, you put in postcodes of where you want to be, where you're coming from, and it gives you an option to put a return journey in there, as do many of these other apps that I'm talking about incidentally. You can put that in there with the postcodes. It'll tell you the nearest train station to you. It'll tell you how you need to get to wherever it is that you're going to. And again, it'll give you times, it'll give you prices, and it's that sort of information that can help you make an informed decision about whether you apply for a job or whether you accept a job that might be offered. But it's also worth thinking about have a think about the areas you've been looking for work in. So if you've been looking for work in Galashiels and you've only been considering Hawick, could you consider going up as far as Edinburgh? Could you get across to somewhere like Carlisle? Relatively straightforward. You might not have thought about these things because actually you might not think there's a direct bus goes from where you live to one of these locations, but actually by using one of these apps you might find that you could quite easily get to places. For example, it's quite easy to get from Galashiels to Edinburgh in less than an hour, and you can look at the costs of that and look at the best ways of doing that, and that in itself can widen out your job search. So rather than just searching very much in Hawick or in Galashiels or in Peebles, in Selkirk, wherever it might be that you live, you can then start looking further afield. So for example, some of my clients who live in Eyemouth might not think about going somewhere like down to Morpeth, but actually you can get a bus from Eyemouth to Berwick train station, which takes less than 10 minutes, and you can get in about 35 minutes a train from Berwick to Morpeth. And actually there's quite a lot of jobs in Morpeth. There's jobs in Newcastle. It's 40 minutes on the train down to Newcastle. So in a lot less travelling time, you're opening up a whole range of places that you could potentially travel to at relatively low costs. And don't forget, a lot of employers might support you with those costs. So for example, if you were working, say, in Edinburgh or in Newcastle and you were having to use a train line in order to get to work, in terms of a value for money ticket, a season ticket is quite often the cheapest way of doing that. Now, many employers will do season ticket loan schemes, for example, which will help with your initial travelling costs to work. That opens things up for you, so do look and do speak to employers about these things. Don't be embarrassed to speak to them. And if you do feel uncomfortable speaking to employers about it, don't forget that your job coaches, whoever they are there to support you. That's what we're here to do. We're a resource. Please do use us. We will always be happy to speak to employers and say, is there such a thing as a season ticket travel scheme in place whereby you subsidise that cost, or they perhaps loan you the money and then take that out of your wages over a 12-month period, making it far more affordable for you to travel to work. So that's another option. Right, the next option I want to talk to you about. Now, this is by far the most environmentally friendly of all. It's also going to keep you fit. So if, like me, you're a bit of a fitness buff and like to stay as fit and as healthy as possible, have you considered cycling to work? There's lots of cycle to work schemes. Now, the one I'm most familiar with here in the Borders is Just Cycle, but they have bicycle libraries, so you can access bikes, particularly during this lockdown period. There's been a lot of publicity about the work Just Cycle have done with key workers, where they're able to use the cycle library to get hold of a bike free of charge. They can borrow that bike, they can use it for as long as they need it, and then they can either buy their own bike, they can go down one of the usual routes where they can do that. Alternatively, you can buy bikes through these cycle schemes as well. They're at heavily reduced cost because the bikes have usually been donated by the members of the public. And there's a lot of cycle networks out there. So if you wanted to have a look at one of the cycle libraries, the local one to Galashiels, which is part of the area I cover, is justcycle.org.uk. You can also, if you just search in one of the other areas, local cycle libraries, there are lots of schemes about there. The Salvation Army, for example, run a number of these schemes. You can look at that, and again, you can access a bike which initially might not cost you any money. If you want to then, once you're earning money, buy a low-cost bike, there's always the option that you can purchase a bike from them. In addition to that, when cycling to work when thinking about cycling to work. Another great scheme out there is the cycling to work scheme, which a lot of employers are signed up to. Works a lot like the season ticket funding that I talked about. A lot of employers now will give their employees interest-free loans, which can be deducted from their wages, so you can hardly even notice it coming out. And don't quote me, but I think I'm right in saying that they're deducted before your tax is taken off as well, so there's a little bit of a tax incentive there, and you can always look at those things as well. So they're just a few options that you can look at when it comes to exploring the opportunities to get to work. But please, please, please bear in mind, there are always options. It doesn't matter where you live. And remember, just because there isn't a direct bus there doesn't mean to say that you can't get there relatively easy using two buses or a bus and a train or whatever it might be. So do keep an open mind about that. Do try and discuss it with your job coaches. As part of your one-to-one sessions, we're all here for you. We're here to support you. We're quite happy to have a look at how you can access transport locally. We can look at routes for you, and hopefully we can open up the areas in which you job search. If we can open those areas up, that's giving you a much better chance of being able to access jobs that you might be more interested in. So I hope it hasn't been too bad having a video message rather than having me or one of your own job coaches stand up in a room and deliver some really great, really fun training. I know it's difficult times, but please do also remember, let's stick to the government advice. At the end of the day, we want this lockdown over as soon as humanly possible. I've got to admit, I'm not a big fan of working from home. I like meeting with you all face to face. I like being in a classroom. I like the banter. I like seeing you. As job coaches, I think I speak for everybody at Momentum when I say we're all certainly missing seeing the clients. We're missing the buzz of being in a room with our clients. We're missing the laughs and the sense of achievement that you give us all. So, but for the sake of the rest of the country, do remember to follow the advice. Stay at home, save lives and protect the NHS, as the government are reminding us every day. You will have noticed that there's an attached sheet with this, just for a little bit of feedback, a few questions on the sheet, which we'll upload to your file just to show that we've gone through this. That supports the work we've done with Scottish Government, and they do like to see a little bit of evidence. So if you could email that back to your job coach as soon as possible, that would be great. If you're not sure of your job coach's contact details, you can contact me directly. My email address, trevor.smith@momentumscotland.org. That's trevor.smith@momentumscotland.org. Thanks very much for taking the time to watch this. I hope you found it relatively informal. Likewise, if you've got any questions about what we've talked about, feel free to email me or your own job coach, and we'll be happy to discuss it further. But for now, I hope you're staying well. I hope your family's staying well, and we can't wait to see you face to face very soon.